The Last House is a new straight-to-streaming film with overqualified lead actors, and, to spoil where this review is headed, a script which just feels designed for Netflix. Conceptually, it's about a family who find themselves stuck in that old, actively gradually breaking down house, and can't leave for some mysterious reason. This is the kind of film which is rather overtly about something, filtered through a high-concept lens. This is written by Matthew Robinson, the scribe behind Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, which is another film with a notable lack of subtlety and a sci-fi concept with a large scope. I happen to really like Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die because it has a lighter, comedic tone amidst its existential subject matter. The Last House has a pretty substantial tonal issue. It's my first major complaint with it. This film is very much a reflection of 2020 and the pandemic, which I do think is an interesting time in recent history to depict in film. A concept about people forcibly locked into their homes by some supernatural entity could be something. However, this film goes for a silly reasoning behind the isolation, explaining the broader, surface-level machinations, and thus removing the enigma. This is not a cosmic, unexplainable horror. No. Instead, the reason is explained. I am withdrawing specific information until the spoiler section, and it is goofy. It's hard to take seriously, and that is where the first major issue I have with the script comes from. If the film opted for something where I was more aware of how bizarre and goofy its central premise was, it would probably be more palatable. I'm not saying to downplay the severity of the situation. You need an amount of buying into the narrative without being emotionally detached from the goings-on. But there's a way to make this concept work. I have a comparison I want to make, and considering I wouldn't recommend watching this film, I suggest you stick around to the spoiler part of this review. This one was dead serious, with infighting and philosophical jargon spouted about the nature of survival that clashes with the fundamental concept at hand. The next is a broader issue with the nature of scripts designed for streaming. The second screen film. It's most egregious in the early stages of the film. I believe that a film should use a combination of visuals and dialogue to convey information, using either in a particular moment. The setup for The Last House is almost entirely show and tell. Most notably, an exchange between neighbours using chalkboards should be able to be told purely visually. With the exception of international audiences who'd receive subtitles anyway in order to understand the film, the written word should be enough. Trust the audience to watch the film. Instead, characters will painstakingly read every single word written on their own chalkboards or the other person's. You as a viewer can get the same experience watching this while distracted and only listening to the dialogue. There are other moments too which escape me, because this film is rather boring. The Last House's pacing is off. Likely a combination of issues 1 and 2, this film moves simultaneously really fast and really slow. The inciting instant and twist are actively foreshadowed from frame 1, even before any footage is shown, but it still seems tedious to get there. The completely dour tone, and the fact that the opening was shot on 35mm, give this the superficial feel of being classical cinema. It just isn't. It can't capture the magic that isn't present in the concept. I hate to rag on the very bedrock of the narrative, but there are so many holes and gaps in the story's own internal logic that kept distracting me from what was evidently intended to be a single-location survival drama and the familiar dynamic of the central 4 characters. I tend to like big concept stuff, but there's got to be cohesion. Otherwise, I'm just thinking about all the possibilities that the script refuses to address. I'm not a big plot hole guy. I don't usually care about them. This broke my usual suspension of disbelief. Greta Lee and Wagner Moura are, of course, Greta Lee and Wagner Moura. By that I mean genuinely great actors who are far above the generic character beats, such as the mandatory break into Act 3 bickering for seemingly no specific reason, or plot-contrived epiphanies, as well as the absolutely stupid decisions which would find themselves in basic teen horror movies. The script offers them one-on-one scenes where they commit to the emotions and the confusion of the characters, but those are pretty quickly replaced by the slog that is the near-consistent stream of exposition. Good to see Lee and Moore getting paid, so that's a plus, I guess. There's also terrible usage of voiceover narration. I find it hard to like voiceover narration in the majority of films because it never feels especially character motivated. It's purely exposition. And this film's narration is clunky as hell. By starting the film with a statement that everyone remembers when the rain fell, the audience is immediately given the fact that the situation is impermanent, at least one of the focal characters survives, and that there are at least a few more survivors. In other words, stakes are more or less void. Plus the word choice, specifying that the forecast predicted sun and, guess what, it rained, hits more comical than serious. It's not very well edited either, using quick cuts in the traditional Blender-style cutting of Netflix movies. Most of the issues with editing feel like corporate mandates, similar to the second screening of dialogue, as opposed to genuine artistic endeavours. Just wanted to specify that here. When all's said and done, this is a film with an absolutely baffling screenplay that feels perfect for streaming, and that I mean that it doesn't feel like a real, proper film. There's a level where it has the vibe of being really fake, as if there's a sheen of audience repellent keeping me from even approaching the actual story. The Last House. 1.5 stars. And now it's time for spoilers. This isn't a substitute for watching the film, so I suggest watching it first, before continuing. The strange phenomenon, revealed earlier on, which causes the isolation is rain. The rain seals people shut in their homes. It fills every cavity and crevice, locking doors and windows. So if the rain has such mystical qualities, how come it doesn't affect the people caught out in the rain? It acts like normal water. Later on in the story, the focal family collects rainwater to drink. Their chimney remains unsealed. They send out traps for it to gather meat. But if the rain seals every single potential inch of the house, why is it that the chimney remains unsealed? I know I'm missing the thematic forest for the trees when nitpicking these details, and they could be overlooked by simply saying that the big, cosmic horror made it that way, which I think is a lazy criticism. Even unexplainable terrors should come with the barest outline of cohesion, in my opinion. Oh, and there's Cthulhu monsters, which come from the sea. The second half of this movie is a hard pivot from pure survival horror to a creature feature with CGI gobbledygook plaguing the screen. The message becomes about cohabitation with these ocean creatures, which have godlike abilities, and to show empathy for one another. Neat, but it convolutes the overt COVID parallels. With a supernatural concept like a big storm with strange rain, you aren't going to get the political conflicts of 2020. But the actualization of such an existential conflict into a monster you can fight, and have an arc where you realize you need to stop being violent, even though that's never really explored in the film, aside from the possession of one gun, reduces the thematic weight. It wasn't interesting beforehand, but the inclusion of spooky, scary monsters simplifies the conflict immensely. The Last House, to me as a film watcher and non-serious gamer, is a reheated Death Stranding. Hear me out. Both have weird rain, Cthulhu-like monsters, and thematic parallels to the pandemic. The only major difference is that one was created and released before 2020, and the other is intentionally crafted to be a parallel to lockdown. There's also a key tonal difference. Kojima's narrative, from the hours that I've played, focuses on the emotional connection between Sam Bridges and his BB, or the diegetic world itself is unserious with its naming conventions, and the fantastical concept is explored in detail. Plus, you might end up fighting, or, from my experience, running away from a Cthulhu monster occasionally. Being a porter mimics the delivery people who are crucial to life during the pandemic, and everyone has seemingly isolated themselves. The latter is similar to The Last House, focusing entirely on those secluded people, but the exploration is so incredibly shallow. And I don't think it's a matter of time and perspective. I get that video games give you more time to be in the world, and you yourself are invested as your character, but The Last House operates with caricatures of people who are hardly given time to develop, and the concept is more alienating when taken into account alongside the COVID parallels. This is a movie with a script so intriguing to me as a case in bizarre writing decisions. I can't even really talk about anything else with the film. All my thoughts orbit the concept, and the presentation of that concept on the page. It's baffling. Truly. Again, Wagner Moore and Greta Lee deserve so much better, because they are genuinely brilliant, and some of that is still able to come forth in this film. But not enough. They're stifled more often than not. Well, that's all. Keep on watching movies, and form your own opinions. See you in the next one.